Somebody pop all day. Hold up. Somebody on their way. Hold up. I would've grown all day. Hold up. Somebody can't relate.
Black
Hold up.
Panther.
Stay down with no faking. Go up, top down, I've been racing. Go up, she wild, I'm in dangerous. Go up, my crowd in rotation, yeah. Are you on 10 yet? Are you on 10 yet? Wait, are you on 10 yet? Are you on 10 yet? I live on 10. Wait, are you on 10 yet? Are you on 10 yet? Hold up. Fuck the place up, 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 fuck the place up.
Fuck up and down, go tear this shit down. I see double cups, don't get now. Overload, don't get down. Got Benjamin Franklin, pick on my deep, I know. So drop from the jungle. I keep the piece on me, I leave you puzzle.
Welcome back to the Why So Series podcast. We are back for our second history episode. This time with the impending release of the Black Panther film, we decided that we're gonna give you guys a history of the character to get you ready for the film. I guess before we get started, I'll ask you guys, how much did you guys know of Black Panther before doing this episode?
Well, I knew he was around. I knew he was a thing. I can't remember. I think I may have seen him in other Marvel books I read. I had never read a Black Panther book. No reason for that. I never picked them up. They weren't really. I feel like they weren't really as well advertised as the other ones I was reading. And so I feel like I was a little unlike, except for the Inhuman episode we did. I didn't really know that much. Which is not really something I'm used to. I'm used to like going into these books and like understanding a lot of references and getting what's going on. And this was nice because it was very different, and I wasn't as aware of what was going to happen. So that was cool.
Devin?
I was aware of Black Panther ever since. Not been aware of Black Panther for a long time, but I knew he was married to Sturm. I knew about the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, read some of those. I knew of him from the cartoon, the video game, and I knew a little about the backstory, like what the movie was going to be on, as far as like Killmonger. But I did not know how entrenched he was in the MCU. And that's pretty cool to find out that he's a pretty entrenched character in a lot of stories, and I think that's pretty dope.
Yeah, I've been following Black Panther for a long time now, and he's basically one of the four kings in the Marvel Universe. So there's Namor, Black Panther, Dr. Doom, and Black Bolt. So he's always been a very important person in the universe, and he's very interesting to read because he's not like the other heroes, which we'll get into later. But he's a statesman, he's a king, he's a diplomat, he's a politician more so than a superhero. So those guys, a lot of superheroes do what they think is best morally, and a lot of times, reading T'Challa, he does what he has to do or what he has to do for his people. So it's very interesting to read him when you compare him to his other cohorts who were with him. He's also, we'll get into that a little bit later. So I guess we'll start with his origin took place in 1966 in Fantastic Four, number 52. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He was the first major African-American, black, I should say, since he's African.
He's the only one, man.
He's the first black superhero in mainstream comics. He came before Luke Cage. He came before Black Lightning, before John Stewart, before Storm. He was the first of them all. And he was created at a time, unlike what most people think, he wasn't created based on the Black Panthers movement, the Black Panthers Party. He actually was created a little bit before that party became established. So that's kind of a myth that he was based on that, which he wasn't. However, the fact that his name was Black Panther did come into play, because the Black Panther Party did come into play with his books later on, because in the 70s, well, in the late 60s and early 70s, the Black Panther movement and the Black Panther Party was not very popular with white people at the time in America, and so Marvel kind of ignored his name for sometimes. In fact,
they changed it.
In one issue, they changed his name
to Black Leopard.
To Black Leopard, and they did an origin story of him in a Fantastic Four backup, and instead of saying like the history of the Black Panther, it basically said the history of T'Challa on the cover because they were kind of avoiding the Black Panther name. Mike, did you read his origin issue?
I did.
So basically, in his origin story, it's a Fantastic Four book. The Fantastic Four was ridiculously popular at the time.
Yo, the Fantastic Four, every single time Brandon sends lists of comic to read, the origin, I feel like for every Marvel character we've done so far, has always been the Fantastic Four.
Well, yes, Fantastic Four was extremely popular in the 60s.
It's like Flash with the villain of the week, except every couple weeks they introduce a new person.
They were very well written for the time.
I would say so, definitely.
And basically what happens is, from the get-go, they show you how much of a problem Black Panther can be. So basically what happens is some African person shows up in New York and looking for Reed Richards and invites them to come to Wakanda. And Reed Richards is like, why are we going to this African hut country? And but they realize that the guy who shows up has like all this crazy technology, like this basically has like a cell phone. He has like this thing where he can call across the country instantly. He has like this thing, is like this vehicle that can fly. And Reed Richards is like, how the fuck does this African country have this shit? Like, he can't believe it even possible because it's even more advanced than the stuff that they already have. And the Fantastic Four and Reed Richards already had the most advanced shit. So they go out to Wakanda, and basically it was a trap. And the Black Panther has a thing that he does. This comes up in all the books, a lot of the books throughout his runs, is this hunt where you have to do like this hunt as the Black Panther is like a ritual. And so, but this time he wanted to do a hunt with the people that he thought was the most challenging thing he could find in the world, which was the Fantastic Four. So basically, Black Panther proceeds to hunt down and defeat each member of the Fantastic Four by himself through tricks and fighting and combat and outsmarting them. And he only got thwarted because Wyatt Wingfoot helped him when he didn't know he was there. And it comes to find out that he was only doing that to prepare himself to go after the person who killed his father, the Claw, Ulysses Claw. So he wanted to get himself ready for that. So, Mike, what'd you think about, I know you're not a big fan of the old stuff like I am, but what'd you think about this issue 52 and 53?
I liked that a lot better than I liked. So, well, as far as it was an interesting, it reminded me a lot of do you ever read the greatest? What was it called? It was a book about similar to what Black Panther was trying to do. It was a lot more fucked up though.
The Greatest
It was
Hunt.
like, yeah, the Greatest Hunt, where the guy. I was like, that's cool. It was cool. That's a cool concept. It's a Black Panther. It makes sense too. It's like you're this Wakandan king. You're trying to train yourself, so you take the most. I guess would be the most prominent and powerful fighting force in the world. Try to beat them, and then that means you're ready. That's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. If you look past, like, see, I just don't like corny things. So, like, if you look past that, it was still a good plot, interesting. So I agree, it was well written. Claw, I didn't realize Claw, like, this was very, very brief, like, at the end, but he's a lot freakier in the comics than I thought he was.
Oh, he's a weirdo.
He's a weirdo. He was.
Yeah,
I mean, he does all kinds of weird powers and everything, and I don't know.
So basically, to give you some background, so Wakanda is the country where Black Panther lives in. A lot of people already know that, but Wakanda is a small African nation in East Africa. And the map is located, on the Marvel Universe map, is located between Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. And it's the most technologically advanced country in the world. And one of the richest countries in the world, and their wealth comes from a large amount of a rare metal called vibranium, which basically got in their country by a meteor landing there thousands of years ago, and the country started mining it and developing it. They're also one of the few African countries in the Marvel Universe who hasn't been colonized, so they were never colonized by Europeans, so they were able to develop on their own, which allowed them to develop at a rapidly faster rate than the Western world And then the fact that they had vibranium, they were able to develop weapons and things that people across the world would not know how to use. The Black Panther...
And their city's cloaked. Don't forget about it. Wakanda is cloaked.
Oh, yeah. Wakanda is cloaked from the rest of the world. If you try to, like, look at it in airspace or something, it looks like it's just a jungle. Also, there's the Black Panther itself is something that's passed down in Wakandan heritage. Wakanda consists
royal heritage.
Yeah, Wakanda consists of a bunch of different tribes, and the Panther Clan is what it's called, is the head tribe. They're the people who basically run it because they're in the part of the town. Their clan was, a long time ago, was destined to guard the vibranium mound, which allowed them to kind of be the most powerful tribe there. Excuse me. So basically, we, like Mike was talking about, we meet Ulysses S. Claw, who's basically a Dutch scientist who has a specialty in mechanics of sound, and he became obsessed with vibranium. So he found out about Wakanda somehow, and he got a small team together, and they went into Wakanda and to try to steal and take the vibranium and conquer this country that's never been conquered. And in the process, he ends up killing T'Chaka, which is T'Challa's father. He was Black Panther at the time, with this gun that shot like this sound based weapon. And then T'Challa ended up taking the gun and operating it and shooting it back at Ulysses Claw to get him and his people to run away. In the process, he blasted his hand, and which led to Claw getting all these different types of freaky powers that Mike talks about. And basically what's interesting about Black Panther is it's kind of a straight line. So in all the different iterations that you read of him, this is essentially his origin story. It never changes. So if you read a lot of DC characters and things like that, their origins change all the time. T'Challa's origin has never really changed. It's always basically been this story. So I guess before we get into some of the stories, we'll go into some of the key parts of the Black Panther mythos. So first, his powers and abilities. Basically, Black Panther is a ritual that you have to... It's basically passed down through royal heritage, but you still have to go through a ritual to be deemed worthy. And once you're deemed worthy, you get the powers of the Panther. So part of that is granted by the Panther guy, and then the other part of his powers are granted by a heart-shaped herb. And the herb can only be consumed by T'Challa's bloodline. But it gives him increased strength, speed, reflexes, heightened senses. He's also on different Marvel lists. He's also rated somewhere between 3rd and 7th smartest person in the Marvel universe.
He is a genius, yes.
So he is an extreme genius, a master strategist. Think about it. He's like Batman, but like smarter, basically, and richer. So he's also one of the richest people on the planet because of the vibranium. And his father, T'Chaka, decided to open Wakanda. Wakanda's kind of been closed off from the rest of the world, but when T'Chaka became king, he decided to kind of sell small amounts of vibranium throughout the world for specific uses that he didn't think would be a problem in order to help bring money into his country and help with the economy in the country. Go ahead, Devin. What were you going to say?
It's that the small root that he ingests is poisonous to anybody that does not have royal blood.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. He's
That's
a master
super Viagra too. It's the super Viagra.
He's a master tactician. He's been trained from a child to be the Black Panther. He also has a suit that's made out of a vibranium weave, which basically allows him to... Vibranium is a metal that is one of the most durable metals in the Marvel Universe. It's that and adamantium. And basically it can withstand almost anything, and it stops anything with like any sound waves. So like if he gets... It
stops any momentum coming its way.
Any momentum. So like if he gets hit with a bullet, it doesn't bounce off of it. It literally just loses all its momentum once it comes in contact and falls. So he has an extremely durable suit. He has claws made out of anti-metal, which basically allows him to cut into any other metal. He has
like laser knives.
Yeah, they call it energy daggers. He has these energy daggers. He has a cloaking device of his suit that can make him go invisible. He He has teleportation where he can teleport short distances. He's pretty fucking tricked out, just so you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't want to fuck with Black Panther.
strong,
He's also
his strength
strong
is
as fuck. Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
He's strong. He can lift about almost 800 pounds.
Yeah. Strong as fuck. He can fight. He's trained on many different fighting styles. And like we talked about, he's smart. He's one of the smartest people in the world. He studied in colleges all across the world, including America. He went to America at a young age to study. And he's just ridiculously... And he also has diplomatic immunity. So he is a king. He is a politician. And we'll talk about that a lot and how that makes him different than other heroes. But that is one of his abilities, I would say, is being a politician and having that. Some of his biggest villains that we'll talk about throughout this time is obviously Claw, Ulysses Claw, who we talked about. Another one that probably his most formidable villain is Eric Killmonger.
Yes.
Killmonger, who will be in the film, played by Michael B. Jordan, is basically he's a kid in Wakanda, and during the attack when Claw came and killed T'Chaka, Claw's crew also killed Killmonger's family and forced them to go into slavery for them. And he somehow escaped and moved to New York where he had family, and he became a genius. He went to MIT. He started working on the stock market. He became like this really economical person. But he's also big as fuck. He's like 7 foot tall. And he's always like had a thing with T'Challa and wanted to take Wakanda into a different way. He wanted to make it more money and more economical, and he's always had this thing with T'Challa, so he comes back and he ends up fucking up T'Challa. He's one of the few people that beat T'Challa in hand-to-hand combat, including tossing him over a waterfall at one point where they thought he was dead. So Eric Killmonger is pretty fucking formidable. You have Hunter, or AKA the White Wolf, who is T'Challa.
Oh, he's cool. He reminds me of Maximus.
Yeah, he is like Maximus. Yep. He is T'Challa's adopted white brother, which...
He got... I remember what happened. His family was in a helicopter. Our plane crashed, and I guess some Wakandan... I guess there were farmers picking him up and didn't know what to do with him. One of the parents thought they should kill him. The other one wanted to raise him because they thought it was a gift from the Panther gods. So they took it to the Wakandan king, who adopted it as his own son. And he was like an outcast in Wakanda. Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, well, he was kind of like an outcast, but he also had Rwanda, was his mother-in-law, which is...
Also kind of an outcast.
Who's also kind of an outcast. And he was born... This happened before T'Challa was born. So he was being raised as the son of the king, and then T'Challa was born.
He took all the fame, attention.
He took all the fame and became king. And Hunter,
it's classic. Oh man, I was the favorite child until my brother came along. So
yeah, but it's also different because Hunter's thing is, and so Hunter ends up working for this, basically like these White Wolf gang. It's like this Wakandan police, but they're very like brutal and shit. So T'Challa kind of bans them. So he's always had this thing against T'Challa where he's like wants to be king and wants to be the crown himself. However, more than anything, Hunter is Wakandan and he's loyal to Wakanda. So he never, if T'Challa actually tells him not to do something, he will stop because at the end of the day, he respects the title of being king of Wakanda more than anything else. So oftentimes you'll see him stories where he's trying to push T'Challa to be better and be the best king. And with the thing is, if T'Challa does not overcome it, then he'll be king, and that'll be fine too. And if he does, then it'll make him a better king. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic with Hunter that he has going forward. Then you have M'Baku, who is the man-ape, which is what his name is. So basically, there's another tribe called the Jabari tribe.
That motherfucker big.
Yeah, it's called the Jabari tribe in Wakanda, and they worship the white gorilla. And basically, the myth with him is that he killed a white gorilla. So basically, he killed a white gorilla, ate the gorilla's flesh, and bathed in the gorilla's blood, which gave him the powers that he has. And he is different than Killmonger in the sense that he thinks that Wakanda has become too based on technology and too far different than its roots, and he wants Wakanda to go back to its old ways, the way it was before it started like growing technologically as fast as it did. So he's often the recurring villain against Panther. And then some of the other important things that go along with Panther are the Dora Milaje, which was created by Christopher Priest, and the Black Panther Volume 2. And basically, there's women from different tribes around Wakanda, and they're chosen to come be the protectors and wives in training of Black Panther. Now, the wives in training part has been retconned because it's kind of creepy, because they're like wives in training for him, but he doesn't actually like marry them, and they're like 16 years old. It's just a really weird thing the way it was written originally with priests, kind of Hotepi. But basically, it's kind of still a cool concept because they're trained badasses pretty much. And they're there to kind of keep the tribes of Wakanda together. Because like I said, Wakanda is filled with a bunch of different tribes. So by taking people from each tribe and putting them basically on the king's royal guard, it kind of gives everybody like a say in what goes on. It makes everybody feel like they're a part of it, which is kind of cool. And then, yeah, go
ahead. The two prominent women are going to be played like Lupita and then the other woman, right?
Deny.
Lupita's his sister, though. Lupita's the sister,
no,
right?
Lupita's not his sister. Lupita is Dora Milaje, and Deny from Walking Dead, who plays Michonne. So yeah, they're going to be in the new movie. He also has his mother died right after he was born, his birth mother, and he was basically raised by Wakanda, who is a South African woman who married T'Chaka after his original wife died. She basically raises him as his own. So she's basically like his mother. So that's
Angela Bassett in the movie.
Angela Bassett is playing her in the movie, correct. Anything else about that parts, like just the surrounding stuff with Black Panther?
No, that seems like it's it. That's a lot.
Yeah, we'll get into more stuff.
Is it fucked up that there's like a lot of black on black crime on this motherfucker? Like a lot of black on black violence?
I mean,
I think it's awesome that I think it's awesome that we have all this shit encapsulated in with Wakanda, and we have all these different.
But it's not even that. So yeah, so you'll see. So Devin missed some of the older stuff because it can get long. But basically, so in Avengers number 52, so basically in Avengers number 51, Captain America ends up chasing somebody, and he ends up in Wakanda, and they ends up teaming up with Black Panther, and they overcome something. And Captain America's like, "You're fucking good. You have an invitation to be with the Avengers." So in Avengers 52, he tells Black Panther how to get into Avengers Tower, and Black Panther basically like overcomes all the Avengers traps to get into Avengers Tower. But they think that T'Challa killed the Avengers, when in actuality it was somebody else. And they end up solving the issue, and after that moment, he joins the Avengers. So for a while, because he doesn't have his own book yet, he's a member of the Avengers for a long while. And then in the 70s, I think 1973, he gets his own book called Jungle Action, which he is the star, and it's basically telling his story. And that book actually sets up a lot about the Black Panther and everything that you read going forward. So basically, at this point, Black Panther left Wakanda for a while because the people lost faith in him, which is something that happens multiple times based on different decisions that he makes.
They stay hating on him.
Well, the Wakanda people have an issue with outsiders because of what happened to all the other African countries. So they're always afraid that basically these white people are going to come in and try to take over their country. So they're very, and it's not even just white people because they don't really care for other Africans either.
Right.
So they're very worrisome of that because of what happened to every other African nation there, and they're the only ones that haven't been conquered or been imperialized or any of those things. So this is the intro to Eric Killmonger where you first meet him, and you also meet Monica Lynn, who I forgot to talk about earlier. Monica Lynn is T'Challa's real love interest. We'll talk about the fucking bullshit shit with Sturm a little bit later. But his real love interest is Monica Lynn, who is a singer from New York, and T'Challa meets him when he's in Harlem. He was in Harlem teaching in college, and basically he invites Monica Lynn back to Wakanda, and they don't accept her. She's an outsider. They don't really fuck with her. Like the people are basically like, you got all these fine Wakandan women. Why are you going to get an American? And that's basically what the people are saying. So they don't really accept her. Meanwhile, Killmonger is instilling fear with people, and he's making a play to be the king. So the Wakanda, in all the stories, there's a lot of politics in Black Panther stories. So more than other superhero stories, there's a lot of political people trying to make plays and coups and set things up to take control of things because, like we always say, and I'll say it multiple times in this episode, but T'Challa is a king of Wakanda first and foremost. He's not a hero. So people are always trying to usurp that power. So basically, you see that T'Challa is trying to fight off Killmonger, and he ends up getting to this big fight with Killmonger, and Killmonger throws him off this river, and they think he's dead. And Monica ends up going into the river and fishing him out the river, helping him get back to health. And he eventually beats Killmonger, but Killmonger will return multiple times.
Did they say did they say in the book that he has a healing factor, because he does have a healing factor?
He has a healing factor to an extent, but it's based off the heart-shaped herb that he eats.
Okay.
He also, so later in Jungle Action is basically one of the, so a lot of times things back in this time were very safe, but this wasn't very safe. So in the early in the mid 1970s, they basically had a 5-issue storyline of Black Panther versus the Klan, and basically they're in Monica's hometown in Georgia where her parents live, and her sister mysteriously died. And all these things are coming up with people are hearing these rumors that the Klan has showed back up. But they don't know for sure if that has anything to do with Monica's sister's dying. So T'Challa shows up, and basically you get some fun moments where you see like T'Challa, like Monica's parents cooking like T'Challa a good home Southern dinner. Like they're literally sitting in the kitchen drinking lemonade and eating chicken and stuff. And it's not racist. It's like just a good family dinner from his girl's parents, and his dad's playing solitaire, and you get some cool moments like that. But you also see how much T'Challa and Monica Lynn like have this fatal attraction where it's like they really love each other and they should be together, but there's always something fucking it up, and that's kind of a reoccurring thing throughout all his stories. Excuse me. But essentially, they end up finding out that the Klan did kill her sister, and the Klan is kind of raising havoc around there. So Black Panther ends up getting into fights with the Klan, and it's really, really good. Especially for that period of time, it's very interesting to see that they actually went there and they actually handled that topic, because today you get a bunch of dude bros complaining about, why is there politics in my comic books? There never used to be politics in my comic books. These social justice warriors are ruining comic books. And I'm like, comic books have always been this. Like, from the get-go, the X-Men are quote-unquote social justice warriors. They're outcasts from society who are fighting for people to respect them and to treat them like everybody else. Like, that is always just, Superman is an illegal immigrant in the country. Like, the entire, like, comic books have always been this way, so it's not any different now.
Not my superhero.
Huh?
Not my superhero.
Yeah.
I was kidding.
Yeah, I know. So then after that, he finally got his own solo series. Jack Kirby actually came back to Marvel to write it and draw it. But it's mad weird. So, like, it's not in continuity with anything else. This is in the late 70s. And basically, it's like a whole different character. So usually when you read T'Challa, he's like this statesman, this real calm, like calculated, mysterious figure. And this one, he's basically like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, he's very eccentric, and he's laughing and joking. He's got these crazy one-liners like Luke Cage, and it's just got these weird freaking characters in it. It's just really weird. It's not bad. It's just not what you think about it. But the interesting thing is, in the Priest run, which we're about to get to, he basically lumps all that into continuity. So he takes the Jack Kirby stuff that wasn't originally continuity, and he kind of did it in a clever way to bring it into continuity. So after that, Black Panther wasn't really... He was in random books for a while after that Black Panther solo series ended. And he really didn't get another real solo run, until 1998 when Christopher Priest started reading it. So he's writing him. So Mike, what'd you think? You read the Priest stuff. What'd you think about that?
I like the Priest stuff a lot, actually. It was better than... It's like that sweet spot between not being too old, and it's like it's my favorite age of comics. It's probably like late 80s, the 90s, and that's what... The Priest one is what, 1998?
1998 to 2003.
Yeah, so that was cool. There was a lot of stuff going on. Very political, as Brandon said earlier, especially the parts of it that I read. A lot of good characters, and I mean, it was really... I enjoyed it. I don't really have any... There was a lot of stuff. I mean, there's still some corny stuff, like some of the stuff with Claw and White Wolf. That was just like, classic superhero stuff. But it's nice and refreshing to have that every once in a while. So I liked it, and it was definitely better than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
So it's actually a very highly regarded comic book series if you read it from start to beginning. I have my issues with it more so because of like just some looking it through 2018 eyes. Like the Dora Milaje is drawn like grown women with like their titties out, and they look like they're 25 when they're supposed to be 15. And they're like,
I read this in Brandon. Like I read a lot of this in Brandon. Like with Brandon, he was just in the room at work, and I was like, I asked him all these questions. I was like, why do they look like that? Like I didn't understand. I also didn't understand. I can't pronounce his name, Brandon. You know who I'm talking about? The guy. It's like A.C. Akobe. That guy. I don't understand. He was a big part of the. Well, not really. I guess a big part.
Not a big part, but that's what he's talking about. Yeah.
He was like, it was a big part for like 12 issues. But he was like, he looks weird, and he's like this odd. He sold his soul to the devil, I guess, and so.
Yeah.
He looks like a witch doctor, pretty much.
Yeah, he was portrayed.
So basically, the way this book is they introduced the character of Everett K. Ross, who's going to be played by oh God, it always slips my mind. And he's
Martin Freeman. It's
Martin Freeman, which is perfect. So Everett K. Ross is basically works in the State Department for the United States, and he was basically assigned by the president to be in the State Department to be the liaison to Wakanda. So T'Challa decided that he's going to open Wakanda up to the world a little bit. He wants Wakanda to come out of hiding and be more a participant on the world stage. So he was the liaison for the United States to work with T'Challa, and he basically followed T'Challa around and helped him out with stuff. And he's also the narrator of the book. So the book is written from a lot of it's written from his point of view. He's the point of view character. And Christopher Priest in the interview said that they did that because they wanted to introduce Black Panther back into the Marvel Universe, specifically to white readers. So they had Everett K. Ross be like the extension of the white reader picking up Black Panther for the first time. So oftentimes when he would start the book and he'd say, this is the story thus far, and we give these little funny, sometimes corny, but sometimes cool and interesting anecdotes of what has happened so far from his perspective and what was going on in Black Panther's life. And he also ended up becoming a friend of Black Panther, as much as a friend as you can with T'Challa. But in this run is where you find out some interesting things. So like one thing is that you find out that when T'Challa joined the Avengers way back when, what we talked about earlier, he didn't do it to help them. He did it to spy on them, because of course he would. Right. T'Challa is a basically richer, smarter Batman that's not crazy. Is essentially what he is.
Oh, why are we saying Batman when Tony Stark is right there?
Yeah, but he's not like Tony Stark. He's more like Batman, because Tony Stark doesn't spy on people. Like Batman has a contingency plan for the whole Justice League.
Yeah, you're right.
It's necessary.
But Batman has a contingency plan on the Justice League for no reason besides his own insecurities.
No, it's necessary.
No, it's for his own insecurities.
What are you talking about?
Superman has lost control. Like I could probably count 12 times in the comic book.
Yeah, not that often. it's Batman can't stop him anyway if Superman didn't hold back. They've established that in the comic books that there's something in Superman's mind that stops him from absolutely eviscerating Batman anytime this happens. Black Panther has a contingent. He wanted to spy on the Avengers because I say it a million times, he's not a hero. He's the king of Wakanda. And so he needed to be aware of these people with powers that could possibly affect his people. Because at the end of the day, T'Challa...
That's even worse than Batman's.
No, it isn't. It's a better reason. If you're the king of a country, what is your first and foremost
To protect your people.
It's to protect your people. That's it. It's to protect your people. And you know a lot of things that he does...
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just defending Batman, of course.
I know, but
clearly,
it's Batman doing it. He's not protecting anybody. It's just his own insecurities. The Black Panther does some fucked up stuff from time to time. Like, it's some non-hero stuff, which we'll get to in a little bit, especially in the new Avengers run. But he does some fucked up stuff, but it's always in the vein of protecting Wakanda and protecting the people of Wakanda and keeping this country in charge of itself and not letting it be overturned. So he's in America a lot in this book. And basically he becomes the enemy of the state. So essentially they think he basically figured out that some Americans, people in the American government worked with some Russians and some other people to try to do a coup that helped him lose power in Wakanda, which is why the guy that Mike was talking about, Akabi, was in charge. And so he basically goes to the UN and says, like, America tried to fuck with us, so they're kind of, I don't like them, basically. And so they're kind of pissed because he said this out loud, and they're trying to get him to take it back. And he just basically becomes kind of an enemy of the state, but he kind of proves his point at the end of that, which is very interesting. But you find out that the book is trying to explain to you, they kind of do a show where they think that Rwanda is working with Akabi to get to usurp the power of T'Challa. But it ends up being that T'Challa had orchestrated this whole thing with Rwanda in order to regain the trust of his people who they had lost it with him in order to get the power back and to continue to be king. So he is a very calculating person when it comes to his power, being king, and his people. He gets a lot of interaction with Captain America, which is very interesting because Cap is so righteous all the time. It's nauseating how righteous and how right Captain America portrays himself to be, when in reality he misses a lot of things that's just right under his nose because he always tries to see the good in people, or he's always thinking so positive. And so you get that a lot in his interaction with T'Challa. We meet Monica again, and basically it's this same fatal attraction thing where all of T'Challa's friends and all of his enemies always drag Monica back into his life because they think that's a way to get to him. So she gets in trouble again, and he tries to save her. But they at one point they weren't talking for a while because I didn't bring it up earlier, but at one point in Jungle Action they were engaged to be married, but Black Panther broke it off because he didn't think she would be accepted by the Wakandan people and that it wouldn't work. So they have kind of this off and on relationship with Monica. Sorry about that. Then you get some cool parts. So you get the kings together. So basically,
I like that part.
T'Challa is trying to figure out. He's trying to figure out something's going on with these people. I forget the name of the people, but they're trying to attack somebody. So he brings Doom, who's the king of Latveria, and Namor, who's the king of Atlantis in the Marvel universe, and Magneto, who at the time was in charge of Genosha, the place where the mutants live, the country for the mutants to live freely. And he basically brings them together and like, look, we're all kings. We've had our differences from time to time, but first and foremost, we got to protect our people, and we think that this can threaten the world. So we need to come together to fix this. And that happens a lot with T'Challa, where he makes partnerships with people who you don't expect him to, because he'll do whatever it takes to protect his people. So what did you think about that storyline, Mike, with T'Challa working with the other kings and then kind of fighting them too?
I liked it. On the whole like Marvel Kings thing was a new thing to me. I didn't even know that was a thing, except for like Black Bolt. Did not know Doom was in a position of power. Don't like it, but I didn't know that.
Man, you gotta read some good Doom.
Mike has
Doom is,
before you guys know, Mike has never really read anything Doom. So this is not the view of the podcast. This is Mike's view because the only thing he really knows of Doom is from the horrible Fantastic Four movies. He doesn't realize how big of a character and how great of a character Doom is. And matter of fact, on the smartest people's list in the Marvel Universe, Doom is above T'Challa. He is right below Reed Richards. And currently, they're both behind Moon Girl. So right now, it's Moon Girl, Reed Richards. Doom. Well, Reed Richards is dead now. Doom has moved. So it's basically what, but Doom is always just a bit below Reed. But the difference between Doom and Reed, and we'll do a show on Doom because I love Doom so much at some point, is Doom is decided to mix mysticism with science. Sometimes he leans too heavy on the mysticism, which fucks him up. But he's kind of mixed those together. Whereas Reed refuses to acknowledge that mysticism is real. He always thinks there's a scientific explanation for shit. And that kind of fucks him up too, because what do you do when you're the smartest man in the world? Like, sometimes you can be overbearing and annoying, and that's kind of the thing with Reed. T'Challa is kind of interesting because he doesn't really go down that path so far, but he is really, really smart. What you see later in this run, because he ends up getting into this thing with Iron Man, where Iron Man gets tricked into thinking that that Doom Black Panther wired Avengers Tower and had all their secrets and everything about them. When in reality, it was a whole elaborate setup that T'Challa started from the beginning. But in that time, before Tony could figure that out, Tony kept coming after him, and every single time T'Challa outsmarted him and fucked him up. And this is what I had to tell Mike before he read it, because while Mike was reading, before he got to this part, he's like, "Yeah, but like, what about Tony? Just like, how does he deal with Tony? Because Tony's so smart." And I go, "Mike, Black Panther is smarter than Tony Stark. Every time Tony goes to Wakanda, he sees technology that he's never seen in his entire life and has no idea how it works. And even when they got into a fight, Black Panther figured out the code to his system. He overwrit the code to his fucking armor. Then Tony thought he made this armor specifically to stop to Black Panther. And he fucking figured that shit out and made the CO2 come out so that he had no more jets that he could fly away and that he would lose the oxygen. And then he took him into the water so that he had to leave because his oxygen was going to run out. Like, he outsmarted Tony every step of the way until Tony finally sat down and thought about everything that happened and figured out that Black Panther was doing all of this for a reason, which is very interesting because he ends up talking to Doom at the end, and you realize that him and Doom are very similar because Doom does a lot of things like this. The difference is Doom does it because he does it a lot of times to protect his people. Because we're getting it. I'm going to come back to Doom a lot in here because he shows up a lot with Black Panther, and him and T'Challa are very similar. Like, they're not enemies technically until at the end they are, but they're not enemies throughout the runs. Technically, they're more like just feuding leaders, I would say. Right.
And they have more similarities than they realize.
Yeah, but they're very similar characters. But Doom does it partly to protect his people because Doom actually does care about the Latverians and he does protect the people even though he rules them with an iron fist. But he does the people in Latveria. I think
you really need to read Doom then, I guess. I had no idea.
The people in Latveria do like Doom, which is weird when you think about it. But he also does it for this. Doom does it for this need to be better than Reed. So like at one point. I don't know why I'm getting off of Doom, but I had to say this. At one point, Valeria, Mr. Fantastic and Sue's daughter was like sick or something like that, and they could not figure out how to fix her. And Doom can figure out how to fix them. But in order to, no, it wasn't Valeria, it was somebody else. But in order to, and I think Sue was pregnant, but in order to cure this person, Doom basically said, "I will do this for you, Reed and Sue, as long as you name your daughter after me, right? After my country." Which is why their daughter's name is Valeria, because he named it after Doom's country. So he has this like need to one up Reed at all times, and so it's very interesting with him. But T'Challa uses some of the methods that Doom uses, but not for the same reasons that Doom does them. So that was the Priest run. There's more that happens in there. It's a very good story. You should read them. I'll have the issues and stuff in the show notes if you want to go back and read some of these things. But if you ever want to read some Black Panther, the Christopher Priest run is very good. In 2018 eyes, depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, if you're where I am, some of it is odd to read. It kind of just like, oh, this is a sign of 1998 like male thinking sometimes, but the story as a whole is actually very compelling. So then you get Hudlin. So Reginald Hudlin, Devin will appreciate this, is the person who wrote House Party, the House Party movies.
Yeah.
So he came in to write Black Panther in the mid 2000s. And he kind of erased a lot of the Priest run and everything before. He kind of retconned a lot of different things. Some of it's good and some of it's bad.
This is the Black Panther with the guns, right?
No.
Okay.
That's different. But he some of it he did good, like exploring the past of Wakanda a little bit more, making the city feel bigger and showing different cities and different parts of Wakanda. He kind of fixed the Dora Milaje to be more what they are today than the creepy thing that kind of Priest had them with, even though it was a good concept. And here comes the part where I get upset. He also did the fucking farce of him, T'Challa, and Storm getting married.
Getting married, okay.
So, Mike, did you know that Black Panther and Storm were married at one point?
I did know that. I did, yeah.
And did you have any feelings about that? Or did you just kind of know that they were married at one point?
I didn't have any feelings about them. I didn't. I just knew that there was a thing. A lot of people that I like. A lot of people I thought liked it until I met you. So this was new.
I liked it. I didn't. When Brandon told me to go back and read it, reading it and knowing about it is two different things. Because like you just gloss over it, and Brandon reading the story, I guess must have been turned off from it.
Well, when you read it, it comes out of nowhere. At no point, and all the things that we talk about, so from 1967 till 2008, I think is when this happens, at no point did I say anything about Black Panther and Storm being together in any meaningful storyline. Because it never happened. It was forced. It came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I think it's like issue 15, it was like, who's going to be the bride of Black Panther? Essentially, at some point, his mom was like, all right, T'Challa, you old. It's time for you to get a queen. Who are you going to pick? And so he's like, oh, I don't know who I'm going to pick. You see him get on the plane, and he goes to Africa, and Wolverine and Storm are there fucking people up. And then you realize, oh, he's gonna try to be with Storm. And so then they give you like this retcon flashback that basically T'Challa and Storm met when they were kids. So Storm, Aurora Monroe, was born in Harlem, but her parents died in an accident, and she was taken in by street thieves in Egypt, in Cairo. And she became a street thieves person, and then as she got older, she developed and she became her powers developed, and they thought she was a goddess because they didn't know how to explain the fact that she could control the weather and do all that stuff. And she came worship as a goddess until Professor X came and recruited her to be an X-Men. But they retconned it in this story to say that when they were both kids, they ended up meeting each other somehow when T'Challa went with his dad to go to Cairo for some diplomatic thing. And they end up going on missions together. And then when they were like late teens or like early 20s, they were doing stuff together, and they were in love with each other. But T'Challa one day realized that like he couldn't waste time being in love with a woman because he had to avenge his father's death, so he broke it off with Storm. And then they basically said that's been the love of his life the whole time, but he just haven't really accepted that until this point. So basically, it's some funny parts in this where like he shows up and he basically is like jealous of Wolverine a little bit because actually
Wolverine actually
had some things with Storm in the
beating
past.
them cheeks. Oh my god!
Which
he's
actually
beating
would
them cheeks.
make more sense than T'Challa and Storm, but that's another story. So anyway, but Wolverine's like, "Oh, that's your boyfriend." That's what Wolverine says to Storm.
Yeah.
Your boyfriend's here, and so basically, Black Panther gets there, and Storm's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I come to talk to you." Blah 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 blah. And she's like, "You left me," and she's all crying and shit. And then he basically says, "Well, how about we start over? And won't you marry me?" And then it goes to the next issue. And then the whole time she gets in the car, she gets in the plane to fly back to Wakanda with him. She's like, "I haven't said I was going to marry you yet." And they get to Wakanda and they're walking around and she meets his mom. She meets Rwanda. And then he says, "So you're going to answer me or not?" And then she goes, "Yes, I'll marry you." And that's how it happened. That's the story. That's how they get together. And then a couple issues later, they have a wedding. And the wedding was actually a little interesting because
Yeah.
they invite all the heroes. And the wedding took place in the middle of the first Civil War, Marvel Civil War. So at the time, Iron Man and Captain America were beefing. And he actually invited both of them there.
And they showed up.
And they showed up, but they ended up leaving because they didn't want to be in the same place with each other. Because Iron Man was basically like, Captain America is a fugitive. If I'm here in this place, I should probably arrest him. And Captain America was basically like, "Yeah, I bet you want to be here to take everybody's name down and put them on your superhero registration act." And they basically said, "Thank you for the invitation, but we got to dip because we'll end up fighting." The Watcher showed up, which was interesting because the Watcher only shows up to something that's a cosmic level event, something that affects, like there's a cosmic worthy event, and he shows up. So he just showed up to the wedding, which was very interesting. But a funny moment in the wedding, this is actually kind of funny. So M'Baku Manape, they cut to him and he's like, all these superheroes are going to be here. Black Panther's going to be here. I'm going to fuck their wedding up. I'm going to go there and raise hell and kill them. Right? And so he shows up and then you cut to a scene with him like having beers with Spider-Man. And he's talking and he's like, "Yeah, I decided to come down here to Wakanda and fuck shit up and fuck up Wakanda and fuck up Black Panther. Then I realized that he had me on the guest list. And then I was like, he had me on the guest list. I might as well enjoy the wedding. He thinks enough of me to invite me to the guest list." And then him and Spider-Man get drunk and they end up fighting each other, which was kind of funny. They had like a drunken fight at a wedding, which was interesting. So it had some funny moments to it. The Hudlin run had some funny parts of it, but the Storm thing was just so forced. So after they get married, they basically go on like this honeymoon, diplomatic honeymoon. So like the first episode, they go to like Atlantis, and then they go to the dark side. They go to the blue side of the moon to meet with Black Bolt and Inhumans, and then they come back and they go to Latveria to meet Doom, and that was very interesting because they end up fighting these Doom bots, and Doom basically tried to play them, and he's like, "I need you on my side," but they kind of figured it out, and they go on this little trip to do all that shit. And so from that point on, Black Panther, Storm is around, but they don't. It's never really written too well. There's a Fantastic Four running at one point. So at one point, Sue and Reed end up having to lead the Fantastic Four for some reason. And so they asked Storm and Black Panther to replace them. So Storm and Black Panther were working with Johnny and the Thing, and they became the new Fantastic Four. And that was actually pretty good.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
But yeah. And also, the other good thing that Hudlin did was he introduced Shuri, which is Black Panther's sister, younger sister, I should say. And she's a really cool character. And she also, at the end of this run, T'Challa ends up getting hurt. And she takes over becoming the Black Panther. That was a little bit later. But here's something that I saved a little surprise. Before that happened, I had a surprise from Mike that I didn't tell him to read, so he doesn't know anything about this, but he's probably going to be mad at me that I didn't tell him this. Mike, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm waiting.
This is going to make you mad. So during that time, there was also a book called The Man Without Fear.
Did they team up?
No, even better. So basically, something happened. It's an event called Shadowland. And so Matt Murdock, who had been friends with T'Challa in the past, asked T'Challa to replace him as the guardian of Hell's Kitchen. So T'Challa moves to Hell's Kitchen, and worked with Foggy Nelson.
Oh, I definitely would have read that. Why didn't you tell me that?
And he took a secret identity of Mr. I don't know how to pronounce it, Ankankwo, basically an immigrant from the Congo, and he managed a diner in Hell's Kitchen. And he basically became Daredevil for a little while in Hell's Kitchen before he ends up going back to Wakanda. So shortly after that, he comes back to Wakanda, and Shuri is still, Shuri's still Black Panther in Wakanda. And so this is when shit starts to hit the fan for Wakanda. So there's a storyline called Avengers versus X-Men, where essentially what happened in that storyline, to wrap it up really quick, is the Phoenix Force is coming towards Earth, and it's coming for Hope Summers, who is Cyclops and Jean's daughter, and the Avengers are like, the Phoenix Force is dangerous as fuck. Last time Jean had it fucked people up. So, like, we can't make this happen. And the X-Men are and basically this is after the mutant genocide. So there's very few mutants left in the world. So Hope wanted to use the Phoenix Force to help recreate mutant life for people. So they kind of had this beef over what to do. Well, it's a little known fact that Namor is a mutant. So basically when the Phoenix Force hits Earth, it ended up affecting like multiple mutants. So it ended up affecting Namor, Cyclops, and I forget. It's like 3 other people that got affected with the Phoenix Force when it finally.
It says Sturm was hurt too, though.
No,
Sturm?
it wasn't. It wasn't Sturm. It was Colossus, Cyclops, Illyana, Colossus' sister, Namor, and I forget who the other Phoenix 5 was. I think it might have been Scarlet Witch. I don't remember. But essentially, this is where the annulment. So basically, Storm and T'Challa end up being on opposite sides of this, obviously, and because T'Challa's like, this shit can fuck up Wakanda, and Storm's like, this can help my people, and so they end up getting their marriage annulled. Panther informs her that he breaks it off. But what happened was when Namor got in power with the Phoenix Force, he went to Wakanda and unloaded a massive tidal wave on Wakanda and basically killed millions of Wakandans, which basically drove a wedge between T'Challa and Namor going forward. So after that, and that created some issues in Wakanda because that was really one of the first times that Wakanda has been seriously attacked by the outside world and fucked up. So it made people second guess T'Challa. So then you have the stories of New Avengers, which we're absolutely going to do Comic Book of the Month Club, Comic Book of the Month on the New Avengers stuff really soon. But essentially what happened in New Avengers is there's these incursions that were happening. And basically an incursion is there's infinite Earths, but something is causing these infinite Earths to collide into each other. And so basically you have 2 options. Either the 2 Earths collide and they both get destroyed, or you can kill one of the other Earths and save your Earth. But what happens is, what you find out is that the Earth is just the entry point of the incursion. So when one Earth is destroyed, you're not just destroying the Earth, you're destroying that entire Earth's universe when that happens. So
I read the first issue of this. It was pretty good.
So, go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying we definitely got to read it because it was pretty interesting.
So
Brandon was like, "You're going to read this, you're going to get hooked," and I was like, "All right, never read it." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I'm going to have to read that now."
So Black Panther, the first incursion he notices in Wakanda, and he ends up getting a Black Swan, who's like these people that are trying to stop these incursions. They've been killing Earths for a long time if this happens. And he captures her, and then he basically is like, I just saw some shit that I can't believe. So he gets the Illuminati group back together. So back in the early 2000s, Michael Bendis and the original New Avengers created a group called the Illuminati, which is basically the group of a bunch of Marvel top people come together to address things in secret in the Marvel Universe. In the original, it was Charles Xavier, Captain America, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Namor, and
T'Challa.
no, but T'Challa left. So T'Challa's
Strange.
I said Doctor Strange.
No, he said Strange.
So Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. So T'Challa said, "Look, hold on. I actually want to read this panel because there's some panels that I want to read that are very explain Black Panther a lot. Here we go. Okay,
You gotta read that thing where the Namor thing that you told me about.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm going to read that in a second. So, T'Challa said, years ago, the most powerful men in the world voted on whether or not to run the world in secret. Only one of them disagreed. And so Iron Man says, T'Challa. And then T'Challa says, I'm telling you now, end this. Walk away from the table and go home. And then Iron Man says, wow, T'Challa. And he goes, you just decided all by yourselves that you are the Earth's protectors. And that you, and only you, not your teammates or family, are trustworthy enough to include in the process. What happens when you disagree? When one of these earth-changing moments finds all of you at odds with each other here in a secret meeting, what happens then? Walk away now. And he walked out, but everybody else did not. So this is interesting because at the time, he wasn't for it. But when this shit happened, the first thing he did was invite them all back to Wakanda. So they came to Necropolis, and even Namor he invited back because he knew he needed him for this. And they needed to come together and figure out what to do about these incursions. So here's the thing. Namor, this is after Namor fucked up Wakanda. So I'm not going to get all the way into this incursion storyline, but basically I want to read this other panel. So at one point after they had a meeting, T'Challa runs into Namor in like this hallway. And Namor says, in secret rule, I remember you said a gathering such as this was a great mistake. You called us fools. You said we didn't know what we were doing. So tell me, T'Challa, were you wrong then, or are you that desperate now? And T'Challa says, while here there are rules. You must adhere to, Namor. Do you understand? And Namor says, of course. Then T'Challa says, then it's time to join the others. But one last thing. You have the blood of my people in your hands. So when this is done, when my wants have replaced my needs, I'm going to kill you. So T'Challa does not fucking play. And essentially in Secret Wars, he ends up killing him. So he ends up killing him. I think he did it with the Infinity Gauntlet. But eventually what happens with the incursions are they really couldn't stop it. Excuse me. They really couldn't stop it, so they ended up getting into this thing called Secret Wars. And at one point, and somehow Dr. Doom becomes a god in this world, which I'm not going to go into completely here, but he becomes a god of this world. And T'Challa at some point gets the Infinity Gauntlet, and so he has the power of the Infinity Gauntlet. And he ends up fighting God Doom with T'Challa and the Infinity Gauntlet. It is an incredible fucking fight to watch in reading the comic books. But after the end of Secret Wars, Reed Richards takes the power of Doom to rebuild the multiverse after all the incursions basically ended the entire universe, all the multiverse. And T'Challa uses the time gem to take himself back to Wakanda before the incursions, proclaiming that his people, they will lead the stars in new ideas. So he basically rewound Wakanda because some other things happened in the meantime. Shuri got killed when Thanos and the Black Order invaded Wakanda looking for a gem. And also there was a thing called Doom War where Doom invaded Wakanda in order
that was a good one.
Doom found out that vibranium kind of enhanced mysticism and magical powers. So Doom wanted to get all the vibranium he can to make his mysticism more powerful. So he invaded that there too. So in order to stop Doom, T'Challa had to basically destroy all the vibranium, or the majority of the vibranium in Wakanda, which severely affected the economy and the people in Wakanda. So by getting the time gem, he kind of reset everything, which leads us to where we are now in the comic books, which is the new Black Panther story being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is really good. And Black Panther's kind of in a couple of different things. So he's in a group called The Ultimates, which was a fantastic book. If you ever have a chance to read The Ultimates, it's an amazing book. Basically, The Ultimates consist of Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Miss America, who can like travel through dimensions. She's extremely powerful. Spectrum, who is Monica Rambeau. She used to be Miss Marvel. She used to be Captain Marvel, and now her name is Spectrum. And Blue Marvel, who's like this black guy, this older black guy who's made out of like pure energies, like he's ridiculously powerful. And so basically, if you want to read books with like high level concepts, like he's basically in this group to like, their job is to like protect the universe from universal or world ending things. Like that's what they do. So like at one point, they figure out how to not only stop Galactus, but they changed Galactus from being the eater of worlds to being the life bringer of worlds. So he ends up stop eating planets and eating worlds to creating new life across the universe.
Oh, wow.
And the Ultimates kind of made that happen. So that's the type of like cosmic level stuff that the Ultimates work on. And so then they have his own book, which a lot of the movie that you're going to see this upcoming week is based on the Coates run and the Priest run. And the Coates run kind of just expands Wakanda into like this political drama, essentially. And it's basically like a bunch of different factions in Wakanda are sick of this ruling by a monarchy, and they think that T'Challa has fucked up so many times that they need to do something different. And so they have all these different political factions across Wakanda plotting to kind of take over the rule of Wakanda. Some people want to have a democracy with voting and shit. Other people want to take it over for themselves. Other people have outside people like controlling them with a nefarious purpose in Wakanda. And Black Panther is trying to like fight through all this. Meanwhile, his sister is like in this state of being like half alive and half dead, which he feels responsible for because he wasn't able to protect them when Thanos came in. Devin, you read a lot of this run. What did you think about this?
I liked it because it showed the inner turmoil was going on and people not believing in T'Challa, and T'Challa actually having to prove that he's worthy to lead. But in the sense that he's trying to prove, there's still so much turmoil popping up in other villages and other parts of Wakanda that is a power struggle. People are literally trying to overthrow the throne, which T'Challa isn't on because he just came back to Wakanda to lead again. So it's amazing. It's really good. There's a lot of superpowered black people, which is awesome. A lot of African shit popping off, like in the jungle. I found out about the war dogs. I didn't know about them. And
you also see more
cool.
with the Dora Milaje. You get Ayo and Aneka, which basically these two lesbian Dora Milaje people who kind of have a love story. And Aneka's kind of ostracized for killing a like corrupt chief of one of the tribes, and she was sentenced to death. So Ayo ends up stealing like this costume called the Midnight Angels, which basically like this suit similar to Black Panthers that can do a bunch of shit. And they get two of them, and then she goes and breaks them out, and they go on like this revolution, and they start like freeing all these women across the country who are getting treated horribly, and kind of creating this revolution in Wakanda against like the status quo and how men have been treating them. And you find that women throughout the history, women are a big part of Wakanda, from Rwanda to Shuri to a bunch of other different women. The Dora Milaje, they're a big part of the Wakandan mythos. And Coates basically takes that to another level to give them their just due. And from what I understand, the movie does that at even a better level. So if you like seeing black women kick ass, you would like this one. If you like seeing the political drama in the comic book, you would like this one. And if you just like comic book superhero fucking people up, you'd like it too. So Coates is an incredible writer. But I will tell you this, if you decide to read this, do not try to read it one at a time. Read it as many issues as possible because it's very deep and in-depth and has a lot of different moving parts inside. It's a very complex story. It's not a cheesy story. Mike says he hates the cheesy stories. This run of Ta-Nehisi Coates is not cheesy at all. It's very, very, very adult and complex and very interesting. Mike, did you get a chance to read anything about this last run of Black Panther?
A little bit. All I really got from it, though, was, A, vast. I mean, very different in terms of artwork and writing. One thing I did want to say before I even say anything about this is that this was like a very different reading experience from any of the other comic books I've ever read. It was different. It was the writing style and the artwork were both different from any other book I've ever read in the past. And regardless of what year or who was writing it, or it was still, for some reason, it was just different. And I'm not sure if that has to do with just like the people writing it but the writing style was very different, and it was refreshing. And even in the newer stuff, you still get a lot of that, which I appreciated. But really all I got from the newer stuff was most like, I wouldn't say it was like the movie, I haven't even seen the movie yet, but it was good. I enjoyed it. Action, political. It kind of just takes everything that it almost took everything that we read, from the older series and put a nice, refreshing spin on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's very good. It's still ongoing right now. Coates had a lot to do with the movie. He was a consultant for the movie and writing the movie, so you will see his influence in the movie. They also, one of the things that Hudlin did, Priest did, and Coates expanded on was really showing you like how unique Wakanda is. So when Mike talks about the reading experience, also the thing is the art. And Wakanda is such an interesting thing to portray because it's still traditional African society. However, it's ridiculously technologically advanced. So to kind of balance those two things in the art, it's very interesting to see in the big skyscrapers and all the super techy, futuristic things, but also you'll see people in like traditional homes or traditional African garb and doing things outside. A bunch of different things kind of mixed together that you see. And Coates was able to like really give you a map and go from different place to place in Wakanda to see what was going on and how it all works back in like the central city of Wakanda. So it's very, very interesting and a must read for anybody who's interested in Black Panther. You guys got anything else about Black Panther that you read that I didn't read?
No, we got to wrap it up. We going on an hour, man. I don't want these people to be like, "Oh God, I'm Black Panther out."
Mike?
No, I think that covers it for me. I think I read everything. Or you probably read more than me this time.
All right, so the next one of these that we're gonna do, more than likely, is gonna be the new Avengers, and then after that, when Infinity War comes out, we will review Infinity Gauntlet, the 6-issue miniseries. To kind of get you ready for Infinity War. The movie's not exactly like the comic book, so it's not going to really spoil anything, except, I mean, if this is a spoiler, that Thanos gets the Infinity Gems. But that's all basically that you get from that. But it is the premise of the film, so to give you a little bit of background on that as well. So we will be back soon, guys. Thank you guys for listening to the Why So Series podcast. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn. Please leave us a 5-star review. It helps us out a lot. Like our Facebook page, and just search Why So Serious Pod, and follow us on Twitter. It's all in the show notes. All the readings that we did today will also be in the show notes. So check them out, read some Black Panther, and go watch the movie. It's great. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you later.